Next vintage gear review. This receiver I have talked about in off and on in my repair videos a couple of times, so I thought I should probably bring this out, do a gear review on the receiver, and then talk about it. But this is a Sansui 9090db that I actually purchased in March of 2021 at a local Goodwill shop, right, during COVID. There's a thread on it on Audio Karma. I started right after I bought it with some original picks. I did retain the price tag. I have it on the bottom. It was sitting on top of the cabinet up here. But you can read, right, probably the day after I got it, I posted out there and it wouldn't come out of protection, and I did some research, and a couple of resistors later, change a jumper, and I have a working Sansui 9090db. Once in a lifetime find. What I paid for it, I'll let you look at the thread. It's in the thread title. At the time I was repairing CDs or CD players and cassette decks, and I was reselling those on eBay. I would also do a couple of turntables and receivers if I could find them. And my son and I were at a Goodwill. I was actually looking for a little stereo for my office because we were going to be heading back in a limited capacity, and this was sitting on the shelves. So grabbed it, couldn't get out of the store fast enough. So the Sansui 9090db. Years manufactured 1976 to 1979. I did a serial number lookup on this one. This one is dated to 1978. 125 direct coupled watts per channel into 8 ohms. It's a beast. It's really big. 21.5 by 7.5 by 16. One of the reasons I don't run this regularly is because there's only one spot I can put it because it's so large. That noise you hear in the background is Ralph chewing on a bone. This thing is a monster. I have a cabinet in my basement where I have like my current setup, and the cabinet, the shelf is only 7 inches high. Like the opening where the shelf is 7 inches high. This is 7.5. So yeah, 52 pounds, gigantic case. The series. So this, I pulled a couple of different Sansui catalogs to research the series and what was going on at the time. So this is a part of the series, with the XOXO series, so 9090, 8080, 7070, 6060, 5050. Depending upon the year, they were also releasing other receivers like the 881, the 661, 551. They also, I found one catalog where they had the G3000 and 2000. So I'm not sure if they released the lower wattage units before they did the larger units or not. But anyway, as you're going through the Sansui catalogs, you'll see that that this was top of the line, and it was released along with other series. So when you're talking about, or when I talk about the 9090, first, if we look at the aesthetics of this thing, I think it's one of the best looking receivers out there, period. It's just a badass receiver, right? It's got the best of like both worlds. It's a dark dial face. We have meters. I love meters. We have buttons. We have knobs. We have dip switches. I think it's one of the best looking receivers I think I've ever come across. You combine some design, maybe not influences from like Marantz, right? These buttons are very Marantz like. And Pioneer had them as well, but when I look at this, I think Marantz like a 2285 or something like that. I know the dial face is different, but the buttons that Marantz likes to use. I just think it's a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous receiver. Like I said, it's direct coupled, so the sound signature on this one extremely balanced on this one. It's not overly rich. It's not overly saturated with lows or highs. It just has a very clean, very smooth sound for a direct coupled amplifier. Punchy, low end, not super detailed, but I find super detailed amplifiers and receivers, I just don't like listening to them, right? In terms of features, this has a ton of stuff going on. It can almost be overwhelming on this. So, you know, I like to say, you know, how easy it is to operate and hook up and stuff like that. And, you know, this has the normal RCA inputs in the back. Now, and it does have some speaker terminals that I'll talk about when you're looking at these. They can be problematic, but they're spring-loaded, so they're easy to use, but I'll kind of describe something you want to pay attention to on these. But in terms of functions, I mean, you've got all sorts of stuff going on. So power button, low-high filter, audio muting, so you can kill, you know, 20 decibels off of the sound. Because this, I mean, 125 watts per channel, this can overwhelm you pretty quickly. Loudness contour, mono, FM muting, tape monitor 1 and 2. You have a calibration tone for, I believe that's for cassette decks or tape decks. Regular tuner dial. Speakers, you have off, A, B, C, A and B, or A and C, so you can run 2 sets of speakers at one time. You have turnover dip switches, right? Then you have bass, mid-range, and treble, so you've got the 2 turnover switches there to help contour, you know, help get bass and treble where you want them. Volume, balance is an outer ring. Now I've serviced, I think, 3 of these, maybe 4 of these. I tend to lose track. Sometimes these can be sticky or stuck, right? This one was really bad, and I've had to go in and work on it a couple of times, and this receiver sits for quite a while, you know, between times that I listen to it, and sometimes I have to kind of re-lube this, and I just hit it with a little bit of deoxit, and it's not the control itself, it's the shaft. Then you have the Dolby stuff, which I'll spend quite a bit of time talking about the Dolby stuff. So you have Dolby controls, you have selector knob, and then you have a mic level knob as well. So as you can see with all the features and functions on this thing, it can be a little overwhelming, like what do I do with this, what do I do with that, you know, what's this for, what's some of this stuff for. But, you know, in general, if you know how to turn it on and select the speakers, operate the volume, and, you know, connect some input or tune an FM station, you can get it going. Serviceability, so I'll snap some pics. I haven't done that yet, but I'll snap a couple pics on the inside, at least I hope I remember to. Serviceability wise, this thing is definitely advanced. It's packed full of electronics. Stuff is hard to get to. It may have some removable boards. Again, I've never had to service one other than whatever I did to this 3 years ago, change a couple of resistors, and I seem to recall the board may have slid out that I had to repair. But super cramped inside there. You have the Dolby board issue. So here's the thing on the Dolby board for these. So they used pass-through. So imagine a board, right? So you've got your board, right? You've got all the traces on top, and you have typically one side where you have the traces, and the other side you have components. So on these Dolby boards, they actually have traces on both sides, and they're connected through the use of a pin, like a piece of wire, right? And you've got, I don't know how many on that board. It's a ton of these little tiny soldered pins connecting one side of the board to the other side of the board, and those tend to go bad on these. Now that, from what I understand, depends on when the receiver was manufactured though. So what I have found, doing some research on this over the past 3 years, is that units that were produced prior to December of 1977 tend to have issues with that Dolby board more frequently, and the ones that are newer, like this one, this was March of 78. I always, when I date something, I put a little some blue painter's tape on it just so I know the month and the year based upon, you know, the information that I have. But anyway, this was March 78, so this has the more reliable Dolby board according to what I have read. And it's not just the board, but I think it's also the quality of the cables that attach some of the components in the inside. And another way you can look at this is to look at the chassis color. And there are a couple of posts on Audio Karma. I will flash up some images of those threads where they talk about either production changes or threads that I've found useful when I was going through this to help me figure out what was going on. Let me put it to FM just to, yeah, there we go. And we're in my basement, and this tuner is awesome on this thing. So in terms of the serviceability and things you want to look out for, things you need to be aware of, definitely the Dolby board. Definitely you have to be prepared to work in cramped quarters, and things are going to be difficult to get to, and it's going to require some disassembly. All of those types of things. I've read about some issues with the driver board, like you may want to go in and repair the driver board. I think that might be the board that I had to repair. There were 2 resistors or 1 resistor that was kind of fried on that. But the story on this was, at least my theory, when we found it at the Goodwill, it was marked, $5.99. So I grabbed it, got up to the cash register as quickly as I could, paid for it, got it home, and the first thing I discovered was that the jumper in the back was set to 240. So my hypothesis on this is that someone probably picked this up overseas. They were probably in Europe, a military member, and they brought it home, didn't change the jumper, plugged it in, probably saw smoke, thought they killed it, stuffed it in a closet, and it just sat unused. So the first thing I noticed was the jumper was in the wrong position, so changed the jumper, looked around the boards, found a burnt resistor or 2, changed those out, and it was good. So the driver board on this can be a problem. And then the speaker terminals. So I mentioned those earlier, and I'll flash up a couple of images, but of the 3 or 4 that I've looked at, I think everyone except for one had an issue where the plastic where the speaker terminals attach on the back gets very brittle over time, or if you were to lean this back, I don't think the speaker terminals are protected, and the weight of the unit, or over time, if you're pushing in on those springs to attach speakers, that plastic gets pretty brittle and they break. And you can see on this one where I've had to repair it. I've got a couple of shiny screws where I did the top one because that's the only one that I use. I don't use the other ones. I just haven't gone in to fix it because it's kind of in a tricky spot to get into to fix. So be aware of those, as you're looking at one of these. So in terms of kind of what you should look for if you're scoping one of these out on eBay, naturally, cabinet case. Now this cabinet is in really rough shape, right? And I'll flash some images of that up here as well. This cabinet, it's not in great condition. There are chunks missing from the veneer. It's got scratches all over. Again, it probably sat in a closet and served as a shelf for things to be, sat upon it over the years. Dial glass, knobs, buttons, standard things like that. If you can see the serial number, I would look at the serial number and try to determine if it's an early or a late production run model. Because again, from what I understand and what I've read, the later production runs are more reliable than the earlier ones. And I'm just going by what I read on Audio Karma. And again, I've shared the information in the post that discuss that. So other than that, and understand this is not a cabinet that fully encases it. It looks like it would be, but it's actually a cabinet where the top comes off, right? But there's no, at least on this one, I don't know if it's true for all of them, there's no metal cabinet. It's just the wooden cabinet. So once you remove the wooden cabinet, you have access to the inside. So like a Marantz where you have the metal cabinet and then you have a wooden cabinet on top, this is just the wooden cabinet. So in terms of price on this, these are kind of all over the place. And to find one of these, well, as you're looking at prices on these, there are several things that are going to drive that price, up or down. And when I say up or down, I'm not talking $50 like I do on most receivers. You're talking hundreds of dollars on these. The big thing is the condition of the cabinet. I think the production run. Now, they did also make a 9090 and 9090 dB. Cosmetically, there are a few differences. I think the 9090 has a round power button instead of this power switch. There's some cosmetic difference like that. But anyway, so there's a difference between the 9090 and the 9090 dB. I think these are actually more desirable for some strange reason, given, I mean, even with the issues that they have, right? But so production year, overall cosmetic condition, cabinet quality is a big one. But these routinely will go for, and I'm talking about in restored, reconditioned, like you just pulled it out of the box condition, for greater than $2,000. And these things will go for as much as $3,500, $4,000. I was just watching a Just Audio video where they were doing like a shop tour, and they had two Sansui 9090s. They wanted like $49.99.95, $5,000 for a couple of these. I think that's a lot to ask for one of these, but they're, I think, in Baltimore or somewhere in the East Coast where they can, get that much money for them. So I'm not saying they're overpriced, but what I'm saying is that, on eBay, these are typically, what I typically see them sell for is probably around that $2,400 mark if they're in absolutely pristine condition, recapped, reconditioned, all that kind of stuff, right? In terms of like a usable unit that may have been serviced, so this is one that I would consider serviced because I did go in and repair it. I didn't do a recap it or anything like that. And I really didn't find a lot of preventive maintenance information. Like if you get one of these, you have to do this. The only thing I found was you probably want to do the Dolby board, right, on these if you get one. But in that serviced, usable, maybe not the greatest cosmetic condition, you're somewhere between $1,200 and $1,800. So splitting the difference like $1,500. If I were to sell this one, which I won't, because my son and I found this together, and it's, I'm just not. At least I have no desires to at this point in time. Around $1,500, maybe a little bit less because the cabinet's in a little bit rougher shape on this one. But again, I'm not selling this one. Unless you want to roll up to my house and take it and give me like $10,000 cash, and I'm just joking. I'm really not selling it. And then parts units, I did find a couple of parts sales on eBay, and I think they were kind of low. Normally I see these going for, $800 for parts. And I know one of the two that I flash up in the image is right around $800, so I guess that's not too far off. But if you can score one of these for $500 or $600, that is for parts or repair, I think that could potentially be a good deal. Now understand, if it's the Dolby board, and Blue Glow Electronics, he has a great Dolby board repair video. I mean, it's a time-consuming repair, and I'm talking hours, like 4 to 6 hours, I think. I think he mentions the time involved, or maybe I found that in a post somewhere, but this isn't something you do, in an hour. You do it in a day or over the course of a couple of days. So it's a very time-consuming, labor-intensive process to do that. But if you can find one in really good cosmetic shape and you're not intimidated by jumping into something like this, get one for $500. Understand, you could have a $500 boat anchor if you don't know what you're doing. It's very easy on something where you don't have a lot of experience to go in and really hose it. When I fixed this, I think I had less than probably 10 repairs under my belt. Luckily Audio Karma was there to help guide me through, and I was able to fix it. And this was, again, a once in a lifetime find. I will never find something like this again. The closest I've come is my Mac 2105 that I bought from someone for just a couple $100 because it's in really, really, really rough shape, but it's a usable amplifier. Well, I got that in a preamp tuner for $300, but again, when I do the videos on those, you will see the cosmetic condition and the rust and the tons of issues those have. But I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about the 9090. And I think I've probably done enough talking about the 9090. I can go on for a long time about this. I think it's just it's a sexy receiver. It really is. They're beautiful receivers. Again, they command a high price. But don't, you can get one at a good price and you're not intimidated by going in and maybe working on that Dolby board or fixing some of the other things. If you got some experience under your belt, might be a good deal. But I think that's all I have on this one. So as always, if you like what you see, hit like, hit subscribe. Also, leave a comment if you want to see a piece of gear. I do have access to quite a few pieces of gear. And you never know what I could either be working on or could be in the shop. Because again, you're seeing this months after I've recorded it because I have so much content in the queue. Or there might even be a video that's coming up where I've already recorded something on that particular piece of gear. So leave a comment. Also, let me know what you think of the 9090. I just released the SX 3900 video on the Pioneer, and I've had almost 500 views in like a day, and lots of comments, lots of good conversations with people about that receiver. So I would anticipate this one, especially when I put the title out there, this one's probably going to get a lot of love as well. So, all right, so I will catch you all in the next video.